So what we'll do, we have about 30 minutes block. It tends to bleed over just because of Q&A, which is totally fine. If you guys got to run, you guys got to run. That's fine. If you have to run and it's still recording, I'll just send you the recording. I will share my screen. I will do an intro of me and who the hell I am. And then I want to keep it interactive, so I will keep it interactive. The way this is set up is some of the slides are, it's a Q&A based type of slide. But at any point in time, like, and I say this like in all seriousness, if you have a question or you want me to repeat something, or you want me to do an example run with you, then stop me in my tracks and I'll stop and I'll answer. So this is for you. It's not about me like talking my face off. Let me show my screen. And the classic saying goes, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me just move this to the side in case anybody else joins. Okay, so yeah, so we had a choice to do a workshop on either sales discovery. There's a lot in sales. There's closing, negotiating, discovery. Andrew, you're, I think, one of the first people to answer, and you said tonality is something that'd be interesting. And I think it's interesting also because I don't think there's any training on tonality. There's always training on like finding pain points and all this stuff. But tonality is like one of those things that Gong.io or any conversation intelligence solutions can't pick up because it's your voice. It can only pick up what you say, not how you say it. And so I thought this would be interesting. And it's attributed to a lot of my success in doing demos and sales. Side note, FDTC is my company from demo to close. I focus on B2B SaaS sales. So I work with AEs, for example, that are looking to improve their sales demos. And so that's FDTC. So a lot of the stuff is not necessarily for recruiting. Like, it's not like tailored for recruiting, but tonality is something that is transferable. So is discovery. So is a lot of things in sales. So without further ado, 4 things you'll learn. Why is tonality important? What tonality is exactly. We'll do some actual like real world examples of tonality. And then we'll do a little experiment that I think is interesting, and everybody loves this experiment. A little bit of a background about me. I've been in sales for quite some time, but my first job out of college was a sales job, and I quit the first day. I was scared of sales. I had sales PTSD, anxiety. 3 years went by and I just completely just missed out on opportunities, job hopped. Long story short, fast forward, I've been in sales, tech sales for 7+ years, 2-time VP of sales. The companies that I did join were early stage B2B SaaS companies, and tripled ARR twice for 2 different companies in less than 12 months. Grew a team of AEs from scratch, got them to all hit over 100% quota and to close at least 50% of their sales demos. So FDTC was sort of like a child born from like the core competency of what I know how to do really well, which is demos and presentations. Software demos, at least. I don't know about presentations like this. We'll see. So, all right, tonality. There are 3 reasons why tonality is important. Number 1, it makes people pay attention. Someone else is joining us. Let me sorry. It makes people pay attention. And I'll give you some more specifics. I'm keeping it sort of high level right now. The second reason why tonality is really important is it creates emotion. And then the third reason, it's part of a punchline. So if you ever hear a really good joke or a really good storyteller, one of the things you'll notice, a common denominator with all great speakers or comedians, is the timing. And part of that timing is the punchline, and part of that punchline is their tone. So let me go next. One of these quotes that I actually love, it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I think that's really apropos to tone of voice and tonality and storytelling. And part of storytelling, like when I read to my kids, I have two boys, and I read to them, they're like children's book, and the owl goes to sleep. And when it's time for the owl to put like the baby owl to sleep, it's like I whisper, right? So I use my tone of voice to reflect what it should sound like, what it should be. So it makes my son feel like it's bedtime because I whisper. So it's how the tonality is that when we hear in sales, like you have what you say and how you say it, and the how you say it is really important. That's tonality that creates emotion. All right, so this is really interesting. There is a rule called Morabian's rule. Doctor, I think his first name was Doctor. His first name is not Doctor, but it was Doctor Morabian. It's also known as the 738-55 rule. And it's broken down by, it talks about like the effectiveness of communication, and 55% of the effectiveness of your communication comes from body language. 38 comes from tone of voice and the way you and your pitch, and only 7% comes from the words that you actually use. That's it.
Do you see that this is different in Zoom and online pitches versus in person?
Yes and no, because now most Zoom demos are done via the camera's turned on, and so you can use your body language to an extent. I've done Zooms where I said something and then the prospect's eyebrows went up, like they were like shocked to hear it, and that's body language, right? So I was able to pick up on that. That's why I'm not like, if you're doing Zoom and you have a video on, don't be like this because you can't show body language. So at least stand back as if you're actually talking to the person so they can see your hands and so you can describe certain things. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure it's more prominent in in-person meetings because it's just you're in person. You can't substitute in person. But that's why I'm a big fan of keeping on the cameras on. And there's plenty of studies statistical studies to back up that camera turn on during presentations and sales demos is more effective than cameras turned off. And when I first got into sales and I was doing demos, my cameras was always off. And the reason why is I was like, yeah, someone's going to judge me for looking young, or they may not like how I look. And they're going to make it, and people are judgmental, and they'll make a business decision based off of that if they're emotional. And so I always kept it off. So it's sort of an insecurity. And then over time, I just got more comfortable with it and more comfortable with it. And people just want to solve problems more than anything else. Yeah. So what is, so I talked about the why. Why is tonality important? It creates emotion. It gives people a feeling, a sort of type of feeling inside. But what is tonality? So tonality is what I've realized and what I've paid attention to all the calls that I've done myself and the calls that I've coached. There are three pillars, so it's sort of the framework. Tonality comprises of tone of voice, pace of speech, and fluctuation of voice. So tone of voice is the voice sentiment and where you're emphasizing your voice. And I'm giving you sort of the theoretical. We're going to do the practical in the next slides. The second thing is the pace of speech. That's how fast or slow you talk or the words that you say. And then the third one is a fluctuation of voice. That's your pitch. Do you go high or do you go low? That's like me whispering to my son when it's time to go to sleep. It's time to go to sleep. I'm lowering my voice, my pitch. So tonality is like just like a website like my logo is in this whole color scheme on the slide. You have baby blue, white, black. Those are all different colors in order to create contrast. Tonality is the same thing. If you don't have tonality, there's no contrast in what you're saying, and so what you end up with is monotone. So I remember my principal back in high school. Way back in high school, I'm not like 18 or 22 years old, but back in high school, my principal would literally talk like this, and everything that he would say was really important. And I never knew what was really important because everything was the same tone of voice. So that's the beauty of tonality. And then Megan, I'm sure you can have examples like when you're hiring, and so we can do examples there. Andrew, I'm sure you can have examples also. No, I'm sure you're gonna have some stuff you want to run through, so we'll do examples in your use cases. Any questions so far? I kind of flew through the why and the what. Cool. All right, so let's go into examples. We'll do examples, less sales examples, just more real world examples, and then we'll do sales related examples, and then we'll do an experiment, and then we'll open up to questions. So baby stroller example. So about a month ago, I went to a wedding, a family friend wedding with my wife. But prior to the wedding, my wife and I were deciding whether or not we should take our 18-month-old to the wedding. And I was like, yeah, but we should just take him, we'll just keep him there. And she's like, no, we're going to have to take him, get him dressed, put him in the car seat, then bring the stroller, fold it, unfold it, and then take him to the wedding. I was like, wow, when you say it like that, yeah, it sounds like Mission Impossible. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, it's the way you said it. It just made it seem so much more difficult. So like how, I was like, let me give you an example of how it's not that big of a deal to do. I'm like, yeah, so we just get him dressed, put him in the stroller, bring the stroller, put him in the car seat. And that's it. We go to the wedding. Like, she's like, oh yeah, it's not so bad, right? And all I did was I sped up my voice and I brought my pitch high, and I didn't like drag out words. For example, she dragged out words. She said, we're gonna have to put him in the stroller, then we're gonna have to bring in the car seat. She just dragged it. I was like, yeah, so we put him in the stroller. So it keeps things like light and fast and makes it seem like it's nothing. That's the power of tonality. Long story short, we ended up taking to the wedding. So I was right. So yeah. So I like bringing that example because it's not sales related, and tonality is something that you can use like day to day in having a conversation. Like if you want to go to dinner, like I remember I did a workshop in tonality 3 weeks ago, and someone was like, yeah, we went traveling, my wife and I, and not me saying this person was saying this, and I was like, yeah, we should go to this restaurant. She's like, no, we've always been to the restaurant, and the wife is complaining she wants to go to another restaurant. She's like, so the husband responded, he's like, yeah, but we know the same food, it's delicious, the waiter knows us. She's like, okay, and then they went to the same restaurant. It's just a matter of tone of voice. It's how you say things, not necessarily what you say.
Do you see the reverse of that true with when you're sort of interviewing a client during the demo side, listening to their tone to try and gain clues from where they're at?
1000%. Yeah, 100%. So there's the body language. What if sometimes the prospect doesn't turn on their camera, and so all you have to rely on is your hearing. That's it. And so you have to pay attention to what they say. Obviously, that's like taking notes. But then you have to really pay attention to the subtle cues, and that could be their tone of voice. Like sometimes like you'll ask a prospect like, hey, so what's the reason you're leaving from the competitor? And before they answer, they just take a deep breath. They're like, well, and like just that is enough to tell you that they can't stand the competitor. So yeah, 100%. It goes both ways. All right, so let's do, this is an example / experiment. Let's pick on somebody that I haven't talked to yet. Noah, you there?
Yeah, of course.
All right, cool.
What's up?
All right, so I want you to ask me, how are you? And I'll give you my response.
How are you?
I'm okay. All right, so what
are you?
So what was my sentiment, my response to you? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. What did
very
you feel?
light. I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like nothing's crazy happening. Yeah. Let's do the same thing. Ask me, how are you?
How are you?
Great.
Amazing.
Right?
Sounds good. Exciting. Sounds exciting.
If I were to draw out the word great, you would see the G, the R, and then the EAT would go trending upwards. Great, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's that cereal? Or I can say something like, how are you? Great. Like that doesn't, I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm just saying it differently.
That doesn't sound so great.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't sound so great. I'm just sort of like, I sometimes like I'll talk to somebody like, oh, how's it going? You're like, yeah, loving it, great. Like but it's almost sarcastic the way they're saying it. And so that's where the tone of voice comes in. And Andrew, that goes if you're like, it happens when you're cold calling a lot. If you're calling a prospect, I don't talk about cold calling, but if you are cold calling and you ask for how are you, great. Like, there's sarcasm there. You can just tell they're not smiling versus great. I'm smiling. You can hear it. You can hear my smile. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, I was thinking about how I answer the phone when I get cold call, and it's usually fine.
Yeah, I'm fantastic.
Why are you bothering me?
Exactly it, right? And
because so usually, who is it? Who is it? Just who the hell are you?
Versus who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Very different.
Right.
And so, all right. So let's do an experiment. I love doing this experiment. I want everyone to. I'm trying to think how I should do this. The proper way to do this. We'll start. Megan, I'll pick on you a little bit. So, Megan, I want you to say the word tiny. Just say how you see it.
Tiny.
Okay. Now, I want you to say it again, but before you say it, I want you to envision in your mind what tiny would actually look like. Visualize it, and then just say it again.
Tiny.
Okay. Let's go one by one. We'll go down. Andrew.
Tiny.
Okay. Noah.
Tiny.
Gary.
Tiny.
let me guess, you guys all did something similar to this. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so that's the power of tonality, where there's a difference between saying it and then there's a difference between animating it. And so I like doing this experiment because it's super simple and it works with anything. If I were to tell you to do the same thing, but instead of saying tiny, say the word huge, some of you would say huge and lean back and lift your eyebrows. And so I'll go into at the end. I'll give you like the takeaways of how to implement more tonality. But this just goes to show you that tonality is something that you don't just say, but you can use your body language to say it and visualization to say it. Question so far? Cool. All right, so I'm going to go through 2 different sales examples because I just gave you sort of like life examples of tonality. I'll go through 2 different actual sales examples, real world ones that I've heard and have been asked, and then I'll go with takeaways, and then I'll open up for questions, and we can do, if you have like a particular use case that you want to ask me, I'll answer, and we can do like a role play here. So one of the workshops I did with somebody, they were selling in the e-commerce space. And long story short, I asked them, hey, what's something that you say that's important on your sales demo? And it was on the topic of privacy and performance. And the words that I spelled out here, we don't store or collect any information, or PII, was the actual words that he used on a call. He said this to a prospect. Hey, Andrew, we don't store or collect any information or PII. So that was the example that he used. And so I was like, okay, well, how do we take this sentence and implement tonality to make it have more of an oomph, to make this sentence be more to resonate more with the prospect? Because storing or collecting information or personally identifiable information is a pretty big deal nowadays, especially. And so if you say it lightly, as casually, without any tone of voice, it doesn't strike a chord. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't create contrast. So this is what we did. We said, all right, let's look at the sentence and what word would be the punchline. Where would it create contrast? And the word was any. So if we're using our framework, tone of voice, pace of speech, fluctuation of voice. So I'm going to say the same sentence. We don't store or collect any information or PII, but now I'm going to use tone of voice to emphasize the word any. We don't store or collect any information or PII. It's very subtle, but it's very different as you're saying it to a prospect. Hey, Noah, I know a lot of prospects are concerned about storing or collecting information, but what's good about our solution is we don't store or collect any information or PII. I'm driving home the word any because that's the punchline for storing and collecting information or PII. Here's another one. Data migration onboarding. This is another SaaS sales example. I know, Megan, it's not recruiting related, so after this we'll talk it out and you role play it with everybody and we'll come up with something. But Andrew, one of the things, like I used to sell, I'm no longer a VP of sales. I was a VP of sales. I launched this, but when I was, one of the things that was really important when we got to the pricing and the plan side of things is being able to migrate data from the competitor into our system. Now, what was great about our system was we were able to migrate all of the data into our system in less than a day. And so when I hired one of my first AEs there, and I made sure that they would say something like this. They would talk to the prospect and say, hey, Noah, what's great about our product is that we're able to migrate all of your data into our system in less than 1 day. Great. He said what he was supposed to say, but I don't feel different. Remember, tonality it's supposed to make you feel a certain way. And so we worked on it. And so this is what we did. Well, we're going to use tone of voice, pace of speech, and fluctuation of voice to insert tonality into this. So all of your data is a phrase that's really important, and less than a day is the punchline. So it'll be the same thing. The only difference is I'm saying it differently. So no, one of the things that our customers were concerned about is being able to migrate data into our system. But with our solution, we're able to migrate all of your data into our system in less than a day. You feel differently. You feel more confident that I can do it, that I've done it before. And so that's the framework. And I like, I'm a very visual I'm a very visual person. And so the way I practice tonality on myself and with people is we write out the words, like we'll listen to a call. And I was like, all right, let's see the area that you could have improved on by just using tone. So we take that sentence, write it down on the screen, and then we're like, where do you think you can improve that? Like where in the sentence can you add tonality? And so we would highlight it and then we would role play it just like this.
Why did you speed up the less than a day part rather than slowing it down?
Because less than a day is fast.
Okay.
You could slow it down. You can get away with it. I just chose less than a day. Less than a day. I've done it. I've done the same sentence where I was like, hey Andrew, in our case, we're able to migrate all of your data into our system in just 10 minutes or less. I've done it that way too. Mm-hmm. It works the same way. You can speed it up or slow it down.
Okay.
Yeah. The point is you want to create contrast.
Yep.
So speed is the contrast or slowing down is the contrast.
Got it.
Yeah. And so like, all right, so I talked to you about the theory about why and what, and then I give you some examples. Practically speaking, how do you get good at it besides these frameworks and using the tonality, like the hacks, so to speak? The first thing is to get animated. The experiment that we did with Tiny was a perfect example of getting animated. I asked you to say Tiny, but visualize what Tiny would look like. 3 out of the 4 of you went like this and squinted your eyes. So when you're talking with a prospect, by having your camera turned on and them seeing you, you're essentially forced to use your hands and your body language. And so getting animated. So if I'm talking to somebody, I want to tell them, yeah, like you, Andrew, you asked me like, hey, why did you speed up on that? And I said, because it was fast. I snapped my fingers. Mm-hmm. I used my body language to describe what fast looked like. Another one is speed up or slow down. I happen to speed up on that one. You could slow down like I did on the second go. And then the third one is pause after the punchline. So
Mor,
pausing. Yeah.
You think people appreciate it when you talk a lot with your hands? Sometimes you see like I can explain things and I'm going to talk with my hands. I don't know. I feel sometimes maybe people are intimidated a little bit about that. You talk a lot with your hands, you know.
Yeah.
As an Israeli, by the way, you know.
I'm Israeli too, so yeah, we talk with our hands.
Yeah, we speak a lot with our hands. And sometimes I feel that the American people are much more sudden, you know. They're much more relaxed. They're much more on point. And we are talking a little bit more with our hands and a little bit more out there. I'm not sure it's so good when you're trying to sell something to to Americans.
So I was born in Israel, grew up in an Israeli household, and I sound very American, and I'm very Americanized, but I understand like obviously the Israeli culture and the American culture, and I'm a very visual person. I need to describe with my hands how I'm speaking and what I'm trying to relay. The only time I'd see, Noah, that it would be like not intimidating but aggressive is in an in-person conversation with an Israeli, where they're very like they throw their hands like come on, and then like they throw it in your face. That's where I see it. But on camera, it's harder to do this. Like you can stand back and you can use your hands. You don't have to go crazy and like jump around. And so, you know, sometimes like if you have a habit of talking too much with your hands, let's just say that that's a problem. Get something that you can fidget with below the camera. Sometimes I'll have like a pen, you know, the clicky pen, and I'll just click on the bottom, or I'll have like a wire and I'll just like sort of mess with a wire just to keep my hands from fidgeting. Otherwise, my hands are like everywhere.
So you won't recommend to use a lot of hands when you're explaining things in a demo, for example.
Go natural. If you need to explain it with hands, then explain it with hands. If you're doing a demo via Zoom, I don't think you'll have that problem. Okay. I think if you sit like this and you're like, yeah, it's huge. Like, where's your arms, man? like, so yeah.
You know, and you're not like.
Yeah, exactly. You want to it's important. People need to feel the way you feel.
Got it.
In sales, one of the things that I think is important that makes one salesperson better than the other is enthusiasm. And there's somebody on LinkedIn that talks, I think his name is Josh Braun. He one time talked about how you shouldn't be like in being enthusiastic doesn't necessarily mean you have to be overly like loud. If you ever follow like Gary Vaynerchuk or like these loud personalities, they're very loud the way they speak and very super extroverted. And some people are just more mellow when they speak. And so enthusiasm doesn't necessarily mean you have to speak loudly or aggressively. It just means that you have conviction about what you're saying.
Yeah, one of the best salespeople I worked with was a British guy in his 50s. And again, you know, if you ever watch Monty Python, he was kind of very low key, very pan, very dead, but he was hands down the best sales guy every year. And he was always very forthright in what he was saying, and he was very honest and was able to connect. So it wasn't big over the top, and it was low key, but it always able to connect.
And sometimes big and over the top actually doesn't work. If you're selling to, and you have to understand your buyer persona. If you're selling to like, I don't want to make like a stigma here, but like, you know, chief technology, not CTOs, but maybe CIOs or like CPAs, they're not as enthusiastic. And so they have a stressful job, but it's a relatively calm environment. And so for you to come in and guns blazing, talking like super loud, you either may inspire them or scare them. And so you have to just know your audience a little bit. So I'll open this up to questions because that was it. It was a relatively short thing. So if you have any questions, Megan, I know it could be great if we did something and then we can go, like as we're doing this now, and we can go back and use this framework to do some examples.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get better in demoing because my last position and I'm entering a new position with a lot of demoing, and you know, I want to nail these demos. Yeah. So, and it's not easy, of course, and everything, because I feel that my advantage is very much in person. I'm a very in-person person. Yeah. You know, when I meet people, I feel that a lot of people, I can connect with everyone. But when it's, you know, a little bit, you don't have this personal connection and you need to explain everything and sound super professional through a video camera. It's a little bit damaging my personal advantage, I feel. That, you know, my personality, when I sit with someone, I make him feel right. I listen to him, you know, everything. And just trying to get better in, you know, presenting things through.
Who are you selling to? Who's your buyer persona?
So my buyers right now, I'm in prop tech / fintech, you can say. And right now, my customers are big landlords, property managements, and real estate developers, real estate investors, and owner of commercial real estate properties all over the US.
Okay. So that particular industry, real estate, is an antiquated industry, where it's a little bit old school and it still needs to progress over time. And so the typical sales relationship in real estate is in person. And so it's as much of a learning curve for you as it is for your buyer persona to go on Zoom and have a conversation. And
yeah, it is a challenge. It's a huge challenge because you're in a position that you need to sell technology for very inefficient, not tech savvy people. Yeah. So
I remember I was trying to sign an attorney to my coaching services, and that's when I decided, hey, forget non-B2B, I'm just going to stick to B2B. And his brother was his like advisor, and his brother is in real estate in South Florida, and his brother's like, when long story short, we were doing it all via remote, and then I met with them in person. His brother was there. He's like, hey, out of curiosity, like, do you not have these sales conversations in person? I was like, no, there's no need. We could do it over Zoom. It's more efficient. It's like, yeah, in real estate, everyone does it in person. That's how we get deals done. And so I think so this is not necessarily tonality, but this is more about what you're saying. If you're talking to like a landlord or an investor, one of the things that you can say to them is like, let's just say you're the landlord or investor. I would say something like, hey, I appreciate you jumping on the call today. To be like super candid, or however you say super, I don't know if you say super candid or honestly, whatever it is, but I typically, I prefer to speak to landlords and people in real estate in person. I just feel like that's the type of business it is, and that's how I build relationships. And you can sort of throw that honesty out there, and they may just even open and be like, no, I'm so glad you said that because blah 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 blah, right? Like, so again,
but more, you know that after reading things, and I follow you on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and I see a lot of the things you are writing, and you have great things over there, and I'm trying to learn as much as possible. And to be honest, it's not the best way, right?
Yeah, that's why I said.
Because what? Until now, you were not honest. Like
that's why I said.
Be honest right now.
That's why I said can't say the word candidly instead, because it's less.
Yeah. I'm trying to avoid to be honest or to be real with you or to be things like that.
Yeah, I stopped. I mean, it happens to be like even the best sales professionals, whatever, they still slip up. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm just saying I still slip up. So. Like I'm trying to avoid using filler words like and is a filler word, and I say it. There's like so we've covered like the how you say things, but the what you say is also really important, right? Like I have a particular sales rep, an AE at a company, and his filler word is I guess. It's really bad because when he's about to show them pricing, he says, I guess let me show you our plans. I guess what do you think the next step should be? It's really, really bad.
It's not so confident. Like you're not so. I guess about the pricing.
Yeah. Honestly,
talking about pricing, you want to be very.
Yeah. Honestly, you can get away with like the word honestly. You can get away with why? Because it's now used as a it's just sort of like slang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like the word. You know what I mean? That's a slang term. So is honestly. I think it's just over time it becomes a filler word. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions? Does anybody want to do a role play in a real real world case in your business?
Yeah. Yep,
Sure.
yep. I might have one.
Perfect.
So just to introduce myself, Gary here. I currently work for this company called Choshby. It's a subscription management platform. It's completely B2B. And there is this scenario which comes almost in every single deal that I work on, which is the implementation, right? The way we portray the company to the market is that it's very lightweight, it's easy to implement. But in reality, it takes about a month to 6 weeks to actually implement the platform. So there is a gap there. And whenever we go about pitching this or talking to customers about this, there is a friction that occurs. And I wanted to see if there is a way to address this with tonality to make it sound, less comprehensive.
Yeah, you're saying the friction is between the sales rep and the prospect, or the friction is happening between the sales rep and themselves, and they just feel friction as they're saying it.
Both, honestly, like there is definitely the friction between the sales rep and the customer because they come with a different expectation of going live as quickly as possible, like say in a week, whereas the actual reality is about 4 to 6 weeks. So how to go about addressing that situation?
Okay, so let's do this. I'm a very visual person. Sometimes it's just easier. Even when I have a call back with a prospect or whatever it is, I prepare visually by writing down what I plan to say. Not necessarily like the actual words, but just like bullet points. And so I think this has helped me a lot. So what's let me just lower what's the typical time it takes on that? Is it just, are you guys usually the solution that takes longest, or that's average for any solution that you offer, that anybody offers?
Average for any other solution out there in the market.
So average time in industry is how long? You said 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Are they, when you're speaking to the prospect, where are they coming from? Are they coming from a competitor most of the time, or are they brand new to this type of solution?
Mostly brand new because they'd be doing everything manually, handling subscriptions themselves with Excel sheets themselves.
So something to know, and it's not part of like this. Wasn't like this is another part of the demo FDTC is the buying scenario. And this applies to every type of industry that you're in, whether you're recruiting or whether you're in sales or B2B sales. The buying scenario is essentially the high level use case. In all companies, there's two types of there's probably more, but there's definitely two types of people, prospects in two types of buying scenarios. One, they're coming from a competitor. If you're recruiting, that means they're coming from another recruiter, or they're coming from another company. They're switching over. Or two, they're brand new to a solution. So if we're talking about recruiting, Megan, that means this is the first time they're using a recruiter. That's new to a solution, so to speak. Or they've used a recruiter in the past. That's migrate from competitor. So it's same thing, new to a solution, or they've used something before. And so in your case, most of the time you're speaking to somebody that's brand new to a solution, and they've been doing things manually. I don't know exactly what your software does, but let's just say I do for a minute. How, without your solution, how much time are they losing? I know it's a very vague and broad question, but let's just sort of keep it high level for now.
Right. About a week in just reconciling all the data every month.
1 week a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And then after you?
It's instantaneous. They don't actually have to spend time, essentially.
Got it. You could do the math on there, because this
right,
because that's going to equate to like a larger sum. 1 week doesn't seem so bad. 1 week a month times 12 over a period of time, that seems like a lot more, right? All right. So what do you currently tell them? What's the actual words that you use?
The words we use, I mean, at least I use, is basically post your signature of contract with us. We go into an implementation phase where you would essentially be working with our implementation consultants for over a 4-week period to actually go through an entire go live with us. That's when you'd be able to start processing through Chargeable.
Got it. So it's a 4-week period or a 6-week period?
4 to 6 is what we usually suggest. So I usually go with the lower bracket.
Better to under promise and over deliver.
Always. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to read this out loud. It's going to take me a few seconds, so it's going to be some awkward silence here. So I'm just going to write out my thoughts, and then we'll brainstorm this. Okay. So it's a longer sentence. So I'm gonna let's do this so we can see some contrast, and let me zoom in a little bit. Up. I can't zoom in. Great. Let's do this. It's easier to see. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'll say how I thought about it in my head, and how I probably would have said it more or less. The onboarding process is super seamless. So I'm creating a combination of the words and the how, the what you say and the how you say it. And I'll tell you where I'm going to highlight the how you say it. The onboarding process is super seamless. Once you sign up, we'll quickly set you up with your dedicated implementation specialist who will get you up and running in just 6 weeks. Many times customers are up and running in just 4 weeks. Okay. So those are the words. Here's where I would highlight tonality. Super seamless. I'll probably highlight this. I'd probably highlight this. And I would put some emphasis on this. The underline plus the bold is like major stress. Just the bold is some level of stress. So the way it would sound, and I'm doing this sort of on the fly here, which is side note, anything tonality related that you guys are going to practice, especially you doing a lot of demos, you have to role play it over and over and over. Doing it once or doing it twice or listening to this, you guys will get a recording for this, but you need to role play before your calls, after your calls, because if you don't, it doesn't come off natural anymore. It just comes off scripted. Okay, so Gori, am I pronouncing it right? Gori?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Gori. So the onboarding process is super seamless. Once you sign up, we'll quickly set you up with your dedicated implementation specialist who will get you up and running in just 6 weeks. Many times, by the way, our customers are up and running in just 4 weeks. It's a little bit different. I don't know what you guys felt on that end, but did it feel cumbersome?
First one feels very contractual, right? It's very, it's very negative. It comes across as very negative to me. This one has a lot more positive spin in how it's going about, even though it may not fall in line with the expectation because of the way you're emphasizing it to me. It feels like, oh, okay, yeah, just 6 weeks. I mean, better 4, right? So you're giving sort of an expectation than a lower expectation.
Right.
So while it's still a potential negative overall, it is a lot more positive way of spinning it.
Right. And then they can come back to you 6 weeks, right? And then that's another conversation we can have, because that's an objection.
Objection, yeah.
I don't like saying objection. I say it only because that's the nomenclature of SaaS sales. You have to replace the word objection as far as like practicing how to overcome it by replacing the word objection with concern. When they say that, it's not an objection, it's a concern of theirs. And so your job isn't to overcome a concern, it's to understand a concern. So if they're saying, wow, 6 weeks, you as a sales rep should think, wow, it sounds like right, like that's tone of voice. Wow, 6 weeks, right? It can either be positive or negative. You can usually tell from how they say it and what they say. And you as a sales rep have to think, clearly 6 weeks is a long time for them, and so that could be a concern for them. But I don't know. Let's verify. So you can have, and so once you understand the concern, or you think you understand the concern, you can ask them a question. Say, when you say 6 weeks, is that a long time? You can. It's an open conversation. Objection doesn't mean rebuttal them right away. But like Andrew said, the onboarding time is exactly the same in these 2 sentences. The only difference is that you're putting some fluff around it. Super seamless. Right. We'll quickly set you up. Up and running. Up and running is like up and running. It's like up and running, right? In just is a very it's just a big. What's the big deal? That's the in just part. And you're not setting yourself up for failure because you're saying we get customer will get you up and running in just 6 weeks. Many times we're able to get customers running in just 4 weeks. And so you're not over here. You're over promising when you say 4 weeks. Here you're not over promising. You're just setting up expectations, realistic expectations.
Right. Makes sense. I kind of understand the process now. So as to how to think about things.
Yeah, you just got to practice this. You can make it your own, because these are the words that I've chosen in my brain.
Right.
And if you say and you can't get it to say the way I said it, more or less, then it means you just have to find your words, replace them however you would say, and then role play it on camera, role play it over and over and over again. Because
that's where the genuine part comes in, right? So I memean, using your words is important because they have to reflect your demeanor and your personality on that side. So if you never say super seamless, then that's not going to work for you.
It's gonna even if they don't know you, it's gonna sound like you've never said it before.
Right.
But you can always test it, right, and say it. Like, what's something that you would say instead of super seamless, or maybe you would say super seamless? I don't know.
I would use simple terms like super easy to make the conversation really simple.
Okay, yeah, and sometimes the reason why I chose seamless and not easy, for example, and doesn't necessarily mean I'm right or I'm wrong. It just that's the words that I chose, was because typically when it comes from migrating to a software, one of the things that customers or prospects would always say when I would ask them like, hey, what are you looking for? They would literally say, we're looking for a super seamless integration.
Right.
And so I would just use the words that they're using. So in your world, maybe your prospects are not saying those words. So when you're doing discovery and you're like, what are you looking for? Maybe they're saying, yeah, we just want to be able to easily migrate over. Then use the words easily migrate over instead of super seamless. The onboarding process will allow you to easily migrate over, right? Like you'll be able to easily migrate over once you sign up with us. The way we do it is we'll set you up, right? So that's how I would recommend doing it.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Happy to answer any other questions if you guys want. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys joining.
Great. That was really interesting, Mor. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, happy. Email me if you have any questions. I'll give you answers for free. Like.
Yeah,
Well,
can you
thank
throw
you
your
so
contact-
much. You know,
Yeah, can you throw your contact information in the chat, maybe in the one that group thread we've got?
Yeah. I'll put it there.
That'd be awesome.
Alrighty.
keep on doing the good job with the you know, all the information you providing on the link. It's super helpful.
I'm very happy to hear it. Like I get a DM from time to time, but I don't
To
necessarily.
be really honest, not to be honest.
Yeah, to be really honest.
To be really honest, it's helpful. It's great. You know, everything in terms of SDR, BDRs, and everything. All the politics inside. It's interesting, and I get to learn a lot. You know, from the things you put there.
I appreciate it. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, I guess we'll chat soon.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Bye,
Mor.
guys.
See you
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good day.
You too.